Today we're going to look at Module 8 and in particular the in-class exercise. So I'm going to scroll down to that. So for this in-class exercise we're going to try to look at a master detail example from Techtopia. So I'm going to open up that master detail flow. And this gives us a good overview of it. What we often want to do in apps is display some list of items and then be able to click on an item and then display detailed items. Now on a phone or a smaller screen, first the list will show up and then we click on the items. That screen will be replaced by a detailed view and then there'll be a back arrow to go back to the list. But on larger screens, like a tablet, we'll see the list displayed and then in a separate fragment on the same screen the detailed item, so that if you click on an item it'll be displayed on the same screen. So again, we have two different layouts depending on if we're a larger screen or a smaller screen. Again, so you should read through this as a good introduction to this idea, and then it walks through how to create it. Now one of our problems is that Android Studio has been updated since this tutorial, so I'm going to walk you through some of the differences and show you those things. So again, we're just going to start with a new project, give it some name, in class 8 recording. So I had normal project setup that we're doing, but now in the next tab here, oops, not that one, next tab here, we're going to not choose the blank activity. We're going to choose this master detailed flow. So this will set up the template for us to use. So again, this kind of follows what we have over here. Oops, I clicked on a link there. The websites are a little different now with the new updated template. So, but this is the same thing. But we're going to change the object kind and plural to website and websites because we're going to display a list of websites. Now, the generic item is called item. The object kind is called item and items. And if you don't change this, it'll just use that term. But since we know what we're going to be doing is websites, website and web sites. So that's where we're going to use the same thing as over here. Website and websites. And then we're going to hit finish. And again, we'll be creating a list of objects should be called websites. That's where that term is coming in. And then website will be one item in that list. So I'm just going to let that create here. Okay, and here's my project that's come up here. And I can see my term like website being used in some of the files here. Now there's a number of Java files here, including this dummy folder with another Java file in it. And then also in resources and layout there's a number of files here. Now in our tutorial, the tutorial tries to describe these different files and what they do, how they're set up. Unfortunately, again, this has changed. This is one area where these won't apply so much. So I'm going to walk you through these files. So there are two activities because we have two different basically screens we're displaying. One is the list, so website list activity will display the list, and then when we click on a detailed item, we'll say website detail activity. So those are our two activities. Now it's possible that one of these activities, let me jump back here. So we'll both use activities, especially if they're on two separate screens. We'll start one activity and then start the other one. Now, if we have to do this where we have the list and then also the items here, we're going to use fragment. A fragment is a way of displaying an activity in a portion of the screen. So that's what this is a detailed fragment can hold the website detail activity if needed on the same screen as the list activity. Okay, then in resources, layouts, we see similar stuff. We have the activity detail, activity website list. So again, this is be used for the list, and this is for a detail of one item. Now, each of these will use sub layouts, so the website detail will be displayed within this website detail, and the list detail will be displayed in here. And in fact, we have a couple different list types depending on the size of the screen, and I'm not going to go into that for now. But just so you know, we have these different layouts, some for the detail and some for the lists, and then we have both the activity and then the detail within it. So let me just look, like here's the website detail, and so we'll display the name of the website in the top block and then the actual website in the bottom block. So here's the activity website detail. There'll be a top block at the top where we'll display the name of the website. There'll be a little icon here, and then the bottom of the block here will display the website. Now, initially, when we first run this, we'll just see text here and here. And then detail, this is actually going to control what is down here. So this website detail, this is just a small block of text that will be stuck inside this area. And we'll see this website detail is the only one we'll have to modify later on, is this one here. Okay, so let's run this, compile this, and make sure it runs correctly before we go on. So I've run this the basic application in an emulator here. Now in the default template, it has the name of the app up here. Has our list of items. This is a scrollable list of 25 items. And I can click on any item and I'll display a detailed view of that one item. So here's the detailed view. It says the item name up here, item 2, details about item, and it has the number 2 up here. And then it has some details in the app here. It just says more detailed information here. And since it's item 2, they just create different things. They just say it twice. If I look at the fourth one, it'll say more detailed information here 4 times. And then I can go back to the list. So again, this is the detailed view. And we're going to change this so it says a website address here and then actually displays the website before. And here's the list of items, and again we'll just list out websites here that you can click on and view. So let's go back here and stop that. Okay, so let's look at our instructions again. We're going to change what's called the data model here. By default, there's an object or this class called in the dummy folder called dummy content, and I'm going to open that up. It has some information. Well, so basically it's a list of items of what are called dummy items here, and then a map of those items. So this is a list is like an array, and a map is it's like a lookup table. You could view it where we can look up any of the strings and actually grab the items from that. A lot of people know these as hash maps, but we won't get into the details of that. And a lot of these are created with static. We'll talk a little bit about that later, but we'll just ignore that for now. But what we want to do is scroll down here, and there's a subclass, a class within the class here. So our main class we're in is called dummy content, and that'll hold our whole list of items. And inside that class is another class called dummy item, which will hold one item. And this is what we want to modify. So I'm going to scroll down to here, dummy item, and we're going to reset it like this. I suppose you could just copy and paste this in here, but I'm going to do it a little at a time, just rename things. It's all we have to redo is rename this and this. But again, these things show up multiple times. So I'm going to go on content and rename that as what was content is now going to be website name. And we should remember that because content is being renamed website name. So one easy way to rename that and get all the, well, not quite all the occurrences, but most of the occurrences of it is to go under right click, go refactor, rename, and just type in or paste in the new name for this, and you can see it's catching those down here. Now there's also another spot where content is used, but it's actually a different variable, and so it'll ask us about that. So I've put that in and I hit enter, and it will search. Now it finds this other content here and says, now you renamed one content, now this is another variable, do you want to redo that? I'm going to click yes up here and say okay. Oh, because it was, now I have to actually do the refactoring. I just hit this do refactor. It hasn't made the changes yet until I hit do refactor, and then it'll make all the changes for those here. And again, the other thing is that the other, the third variable here, website URL, we're going to store the URL. Instead of details, it'll be the URL of website. So again, right click on that and refactor. There's lots of stuff you can do in refactor, but we're just doing the simplest rename. Set that up, hit enter, and again there's another parameter here. We're changing details to website name, and I'm going to do that one also, and then do that refactoring. So that'll set that up. Okay, so we've got that code changed in our dummy item. Now, it shows you this code, which is up in the top under static, and says you should replace it with this code. This is a little wrong. This is the right code we're going to add in here, but since this time they've updated, instead of just adding 3 dummy items, they have a loop that adds 25 dummy items. So we're going to scroll up here, go back to our code, scroll up to the very top of the dummy content Java, find this static area. This is like a constructor. Again, this is a class, and they're creating a lot of static variables. Now, you've got to be careful with static variables, and generally we avoid them, but we do use them here in a couple places in Android because we're kind of forced to, and I'll see if I have time to describe why later on. So here's our for loop here, and here's where we're going to change it to our add items. I'm just going to put this all on one line so that it's easier to read. The textbook likes to wrap things so you can see them, but now that we're in code, we can put each of these items. We're adding new dummy items here, calling the constructor. Now, up here, we can get rid of this loop. I'm just going to comment it out. Let's see, what's that? Control slash, yeah. And not use it there. It was also using this constant up here for count. We don't need that anymore, so comment that out. And it was calling add items, and we need to keep add items. We're using add items also down here, so we're using add items. But it was also using this create dummy item. Oops, we don't need that, and that actually called make details. That's what ran a loop and repeated the more information here or something like that. Details about repeated that as many times as we like 4 times for the fourth thing. So this create dummy items and more and make details, we don't need those, so I'm going to comment those out. I could get rid of them, but again, when I'm working on examples here, I often like to comment them out in case I make a mistake and realize I have to put them back later on. Okay, so we've added these items here. Now the next thing we want to do is go into the detail layout and add this. So I'm just going to grab this web view, cut that out or copy that out, and then we're going to go into the layout, into the website detail, not the activity website detail, but just the website detail. Now this is just one text view that shows one item in the list view. And so we're going to change this so it, it shows, yeah, in the detail view, this just shows one detailed item, and before it was just showing some text, but we're going to change this so that it shows a web view. So I want to have a web view here. So this is what we want it to look like. Instead of a text view, we want to change it to a web view. Okay, so I'm going to delete. I should have actually just deleted the text view to start with, I guess. It would have been easier. I'm going to make sure I delete all of the text view stuff and replace it by the web view. And one thing that's important is that this ID, website detail, is the same in both the old version and the new version. So in both cases, I can refer to this website detail in the same way. Okay, so I've got that changed. Make sure I save my changes to that content. Okay, so again, there are some changes here, but a lot of this we can follow along with this tutorial a lot. In fact, that whole web view we can just paste in here. So the next thing is we have to, when we're actually going to display the website detail, it used to display it in a text view and just get the text and display it. We're going to change that so that it displays, it grabs a web view and loads a URL into that using the website URL that we created. Okay, so we're going to go find this fragment page. So this is the website detail fragment. So we're going to go here, website detail fragment, open that up, scroll down to the on create view content here. And we're already beginning to see an error here. So, and we're going to paste in this new code here. So this is the code we're going to want to do. And let's talk about what that's doing. I'll put that again on one line so we can compare the two more easily. We've got to import WebView, and so I'm just going to hit Alt-Enter to import WebView again, and that'll add the WebView. So WebView is just a little widget that'll display a website. I think we've seen that already in this course. So that adds this import Android WebKit WebView up here. Okay, so these are our two lines. This is what the old one was. We were using a text view. Now we're casting it to a web view. We're going to find an item in our web detail, and again, remember we changed the web detail, website detail, from a text view to a web view, so now it'll be a web view. And before we were just setting the text of that to our items, our dummy items website URL. Now we're going to set it to our dummy items website URL, but we're going to do a load URL. We're going to load in that web page in here. So I'm just going to comment out this one line here and just use this other line. And again, you can paste in this exact line here, although it's not exactly clear that that's the only line is different, and that's the only line you should paste in there because some of the other things may have changed. I haven't texted it all out, so just paste that one line in here. Okay, now the last thing is, if we're going to be using the internet, we've got to give ourselves permissions to do that. Otherwise, when we open up our web page, it'll try to load the web page, but it'll fail, and it looks like we won't have an internet connection. Apps have to be assigned permissions because we have to ask the user when we install the app, can we have access to the internet? So we're going to go into Manifest, Android Manifest, and up here, make sure you put in the right place. Up above the application tag, below the Manifest tag, you're just going to paste in that user permission and use the internet. So your app will be able to use the internet. Okay, so we've got that saved. Okay, now we hopefully can run our app. So let's see. Now I think we'll get one more error in here where, remember, we renamed content and into website something. So so here's our error. It's in this website list activity, and again we are grabbing the content. Now it didn't find in general, when you do refactor, it should find all the occurrences and do it well, but Android uses these special R files and IDs to tie in to these XML layouts, and so sometimes those get confused. So if you remember, in our dummy activity, we renamed the we renamed the content website name. And again, when we display the list activity, we want to make sure we do that. So again, I'm going to just copy this and paste it in and comment this one out. And I'm just going to actually go back and do a dot and then find our website name here and grab the website name, this variable from here. Okay, now let's try to compile. Hopefully we won't have any more errors. So here's our in class 8 recording came up. We have our 3 websites here, and then we should be able to click on them. So this is our list activity, and again, I'm seeing this on one page because I have a small emulator, a small screen running. I should be able to click on one of these items and it should bring up the detail view of that item, and it'll display it'll try to load in the actual, I think I clicked on Wikipedia, it should it'll try to load in the actual Wikipedia page here. So it displays the name I have, and down here it'll try to load in Wikipedia itself. And again, if I have permission set up and everything, I should see the emulator, see the web page running right there. So it brought up Wikipedia. Now since I had to run a very small emulator to try to fit on this recording screen. The web view actually took over the whole screen. Now, if you're on a slightly larger emulator or on your phone, it'll probably run the web view in this little screen down here, and you might just see it there. So again, it's kind of dynamic on how it'll display this content for you. One of the problems when it goes full screen on it is I lose my back arrow that I would normally see here. And then I go back to my list and I can click on another item. So hopefully you can get that all up and running, and that finishes this basic tutorial here. But there's a couple other things I want you to do rather than just do the tutorial. So I'm going to close that. So go through the tutorial. That's for second. I want you to change the name of dummy items and dummy list to something like site items and site lists. And again, we can use the rename if we want to do that. So I'm going to go back in my code. In dummy content here, I'm going to open that up. First there's this dummy items. So this will be a site item, and again I'm going to rename this. I'm just going to right click on it and say refactor, rename, call it something like site item. And again, this was a relatively simple thing, so let's try that again. I'm going to refactor, rename. And I'm going to go in here and just do site item. And now, yeah, I deleted too much last time. Okay, now I hit the do refactor and it should set that up for me. And again, sometimes when you do this, it won't ask you to refactor, but sometimes it will, depending on the level of change. So now I have site items there for website items. And instead of having dummy content, I'm going to have this be my site list. So I'm going to go here and again refactor this and have this rename to site list. Okay, so I have my site item and my site list up here. Notice when you change this main class here, it will change, of course, the Java file name because they have to match. The other thing is there's this folder here called dummy. You can also change that. I can just go in and refactor and change that. And just call it something like data, list data. List data. And give it some name like that. So we're going to set up that. Then the last thing I want you to do is add one more item to the sample list here. We're creating three items. Why don't you just add one more item for like Saints class? You can actually add a couple more if you want, but let's just do one more oops, get that in the right spot. Add items. So we're going to add every item. We have to make an ID, a name, and then a web address. In here. So we've got that added in. Now let's just talk, I'm going to compile this and then talk a little bit about the static stuff here. Now, in another world that wasn't Android, what we'd want to do is to get rid of all these static items here. We wouldn't want to make a class with big static variables like our whole list, and then this static. We'd want an actual constructor here that would do the constructor, and we wouldn't have another static class here. But so why are we doing static? Well, we could move that all into this the website list activity. We could, if it wasn't static, inside here we'd be declaring an object. Like right here we have a Boolean. We'd have another object of type site list, and we'd just create a new site list, and then in our onCreate we'd instantiate that. We'd say site list equals new site list and create the new site list, and then we could add our items in here. We'd call a constructor and add the items here, and run it just fine. And then inside our code here, we'd have places where we'd use that site. Now here, they actually declare a site item, here an actual item, and then they actually have the list up here. They declare a list up here. But again, this create. They're going to use it statically. Now, the reason why we kind of have to use static stuff is that we have to use the list here in the website list, but then we also pass it to the detailed activity, and we use it here also. Android has a problem with passing things from one activity to another, especially through fragments. It's very hard. We can easily pass strings from one fragment or one activity to the other, but it's really hard to pass objects or arrays or lists of objects. And so it's just a weird function with Android. So the get around for that is to declare these things as static, declare our variables as static here, and then we can just reference these static variables inside this class anywhere from any class. When we say something static, it basically puts it in a separate memory space, not in our stack. And so we can reference those static variables from any class. It's kind of almost like a global variable. And again, we generally would avoid that, but Android really kind of forces us to use some things like that. Okay, back. So we ran this, we made these changes. Here's our objects. Here's Saint Scholastica. Now I've added that, and I can bring up that website. Okay, so let's see how we're doing. We're going back here, and we've done things. So all you have to do then is save your project, either upload it to GitHub or zip it up and submit it. to this spot.